I do like the idea of what you just said. We can hope for. I think I would really like to believe that it should be more than hope. Do you? Uh, I mean, I presume that the reason that the motivation for putting this report together or auditing where we stand is so that you can present this information to our policymakers, our legislators, so that they can make it a priority to. And I know that that the Republican led legislature has made efforts to change our tax system. And well, unfortunately, I think we have a governor that has a whole lot of veto pens, but not a lot of pens that in which he signs legislation like this into law. Is that fairly accurate?
I think it certainly is an area where the case for a lot of these ideas, which all of us believe are really good ideas, needs to be made um, pretty strongly, because we could do a lot more with the state if we just make it very clear exactly what the room for improvement is and why that's a good idea. So you hope that that kind of argument can overcome any maybe like personal differences.
Do you think that I mean, having conversations with Democrats, I mean, using the reasoning that even Minnesota, of which is majority led by Democrats, uh, they have more fiscal freedoms than we do here in Wisconsin.
You're right, I think, and that's one of the things that really leapt out at me when I was comparing Wisconsin to other states, because I really did not expect to find the biggest area of departure with Minnesota is just the regulatory code. So just what the state bureaucracy has put into place, all these little rules and regulations for managing life. Minnesota's regulatory code is almost half as long as ours is, which I was not expecting to come across.
Can you give some examples of some outrageous regulatory uh, code, I guess you use the term, that, I mean, our listeners would be, I don't know, floored by?
So some of the worst examples of regulation, and these are actually city-based rather than state-based, but some of the worst regulation that we came across in Wisconsin has to do with the rules that cities put in place restricting the kinds of business that you could run out of your own home. And this is the sort of thing where you might have like an eBay shop, or you resell something, or perhaps an Etsy shop. And there are a lot of cities that have really restrictive rules about what you can or can't do. So there are some cities like Kenosha, for example, where all merchandise that you sell from a home business must be made on premises. So that rules out any sort of buying and reselling kind of an operation. And then you've got places like Brookfield where they ban you keeping any sort of inventory on site. And then Wausau and Oshkosh, for example, ban conducting any sales on site. So those were a whole slate of.
Wait, you just said Wassa?
Yes, I did.
So what's the specific example about what you can't do in Wassa?
So Wausau bans sales on site. So this means that you could, for example, have an eBay store where you're running things out of your home, but you could never have someone over. You could never actually conduct a sale on the premises of your home if you were running a business out of it.
Oh, so I mean, let's just use as an example Facebook Marketplace. So technically, you couldn't sell products on Facebook Marketplace regularly, like as if you had a business, if you were having the customer come to your home to purchase them in Wausau.
That is what it seems the law is saying.
Wow, I had no idea. I mean, we've sold stuff on, oh my gosh, I don't want to implicate myself. I don't want to get arrested. So that's really eye-opening, I guess, to me, because I mean, there are things I think that people will meet somewhere, but I often see people post on Facebook Marketplace porch pickup, and someone will roll up and pick up the whatever it is that the person is selling, and exchange the money, and off they go. And does that is it specifically to businesses, or I mean, because you'd think that would eliminate garage sales in Wausau?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if it would ban a garage sale where you have one day rather than conducting a business, which a lot of people do on the side, and a lot of our, of course, biggest businesses started with people working out of their garages, Apple or Amazon, for example.
Yeah, well, I mean, how are you ever going to get a start? I mean, most businesses, well, probably all businesses start small with an individual and then expand from there. And, if you don't have the resources to immediately have a storefront, I mean, it's the logical conclusion that you would start in your home. So let's talk about individual freedoms. According to your report, Wisconsin ranks 21st in individual freedoms. What does that include? What does that entail?
So education freedom is one of those, for example, and that's one where, again, you see Wisconsin is middle of the road and kind of a mixed bag, because on the one hand, we were the pioneers of the modern school choice system, which is really great, and we've even had some new laws at the state legislature that did a lot to bring funding parity to the choice system, which was a step in the right direction. But our school choice system is heavily regulated, especially compared to other states around the country. So that's one kind of a drawback that keeps us from being better than we clearly could be.
Boy, that's it's kind of I'm trying to find the silver lining in all of this, and I guess the silver lining is that first you identify what the problem is, and then you go to those that can solve the problem, and that would be our legislators. So does Will actually have lobbyists, or maybe we call them advocates, that talk directly with or do meet with our legislators to try to promote these policies that you would like to see changed in Wisconsin?
My coworkers and I do sometimes travel to Madison and either meet with lawmakers or testify in front of committees. My coworkers, Dr. Will Flanders and others, have testified in front of committees on some specific questions of policy, although the balance of our time is mostly doing the research of finding out what the state of affairs is and what some solutions could be. So with school regulation, for example, I think some people don't like how the choice system is less regulated, or they'll call it less accountability than the public school system. And it's important to remind ourselves that, Wisconsin has one of the most regulated choice systems compared to any other state in the country. And not making it just be public school light is something we should hope for. It shouldn't just be a slightly scaled down version of regulated public school systems.
Okay, so I am reading in your report that there is, I try to find the silver lining. There's some good news about Wisconsin and freedom of speech. Can you talk about that specifically?
Yeah, so freedom of speech is interesting because there's been a new kind of law that people have been putting out across the country. So generally, one kind of abuse of the legal system is where people can start defamation lawsuits to sue people to shut them up and keep them from speaking out. And sometimes these are referred to as, colorfully, as a SLAP, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. So someone hasn't actually committed defamation, but someone who wants them to stop talking or speaking out on a subject can put together a defamation lawsuit just to keep them from talking about it. And what can be devastating about this is that there's this estimate that the typical cost of defeating a meritless, a completely undeserved one of these lawsuits, can be about $40,000, just the legal system being as expensive as it is. So one new type of law that many states have put together and put into place is specifically trying to address this, where it lets people who are subject to a defamation lawsuit raise the question just directly, is this just this kind of a waste of time? And a lot of states have put this into place, states from like Kentucky and Louisiana to Vermont. So that's one thing that we really hope can see some progress here.
Okay, so Noah, I just got a question from one of our legislators. Good news! We got someone listening that could potentially make some changes in Madison. He asks, does Will have a copy of the report available online that he can read?
Yes, we absolutely do. The 2024 Freedom Audit that we've conducted of the state is available at will-law.org.
Well, so good. Well, I'm glad to hear that we're able to, and for our listeners too that want to read more in depth. I think it's a 25-page report, but I mean it's good information. And I was reading through some of the successes, and then I like the way that it's categorized. I know that there's some failures in Wisconsin because, again, we already established that we're sort of middle of the road or average, but a failure or something that we can improve upon is looked at as an opportunity, right? And so that's what I look at with this report, that we can always there's always room for improvement in the state of Wisconsin. And are there some specifics with regard to the different measures or categories that you've identified? Freedom, fiscal freedom, regulatory freedom, or individual freedoms. Is there something in particular that is higher priority for Will that we can see or we can anticipate maybe will be taken up in this next session by our legislature?
That could be a little hard to predict just because of the decision-making and priorities of the legislators, but education freedom, which we talked about earlier, is something that Wisconsin has a lot to be proud of, also has a lot of room to grow, and that Will always cares about. It's a tremendously important subject, and so whatever winds up happening in this next period of the legislature, Will is going to be championing education freedom.
And I see, too, that, well, up until, I don't know what's going to happen with this recent decision by this Dane County judge in Act 10, but one of the successes that your report cites is that Wisconsin has the nation's best funded public pension system. I mean, is that possible that will change with this decision by this Dane County judge?
It's an interesting question. We've paid some attention to the Act 10 litigation, and I'm not sure if the statewide pension system would be impacted. I would expect that if it is impacted, it would be negatively, but the state pension system that we have has been very robust. People made a lot of responsible choices, like not hoping for the market to produce unrealistically high returns. We have much more realistic returns than many other states, and so the pension system and its health did predate Act 10, so hopefully, however bad some other effects might be from getting rid of Act 10 or striking down or anything like that, hopefully the pension system would be able to weather that pretty okay.
Well, good. And I would imagine that's due to the fiscal conservative, intelligent Republicans that have I guess I would say, a very educated financial background, and I'm grateful. And I would also say, too, they believe in accountability, and rather than, as you described, rather than hoping for the market to perform well, there were points put into place that would actually strengthen the pension system here in Wisconsin. Well, Noah, anything else you'd like to add about this report before I let you go?
Just taking a broader look, Wisconsin, started this new millennium, year 2000, pretty unfree, relatively unfree across these categories, and we were able to improve a lot. A lot of that growth, unsurprisingly, happened in the earlier 2010s with the Walker years. So there is growth is possible, growth's a reality. So there are a lot of much more free directions that the state can move in. That can be our tomorrow.
Well, good. I always like to leave on an upswing. Well, Noah, thanks for joining me this morning. I appreciate your time and all your hard work to put this report together with your team at Will. And again, the report is available at will-law.org. Hope you have a great day. Come back again and talk with me anytime.